Good evening. Welcome to Loveworld USA News. I'm Joel Richard. First, a quick look at the top stories this evening. President Donald Trump says the United States is trying to get Bagram back from the Taliban. The Trump administration weighs higher retirement age as Social Security faces 2034 shortfall. And Turning Point USA names Erica Kirk CEO and board chair after a husband's assassination. House Judiciary blocks Democratic bid to subpoena bank CEOs in Epson inquiry. And a federal judge halts discipline of Virginia students in locker room dispute, citing irreparable harm. And now to the news. President Donald Trump has announced his administration is trying to regain control of Bagram airfield in Afghanistan, calling the former U.S. base strategically vital and criticizing the Biden-era withdrawal. Now standing alongside UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, President Trump added that they need things from us, without specifying who he meant, and argued Bagram is an hour away from where China makes its nuclear weapons. Now, the White House did not immediately comment. Bagram, once the hub of U.S. operations in Afghanistan, has been under Taliban control since the 2021 collapse of Kabul, with the group marking the third anniversary of the U.S. withdrawal with a military parade there in 2024. The remarks follow limited U.S. engagement with Taliban officials this year. Just in March, hostage envoy Adam Boehler and U.S. diplomat Zalmay Khalilzad met with the Taliban's former minister, Amir Khan Muttaqi, in Kabul amid efforts to secure an American's release, as the Taliban signaled interest in normalizing ties after years of diplomatic isolation. U.S. troop removal from Afghanistan began under a 2020 agreement reached during President Trump's first term, which set a May 1, 2021 deadline for withdrawal. President Biden extended the timeline to August 2021. Open source reporting showed Taliban gains in the lead up to the final exit, and President Trump has repeatedly blasted how the withdrawal was handled. Watch this.
It's been 4 years now since the Taliban took control of the airport after the U.S. rapidly pulled its forces from Afghanistan in 2021 in a disastrous withdrawal under the Biden administration. There's video, you'll remember this, that shows the chaotic moments. People were chasing the plane as it left the Kabul airport carrying United States forces out of the country. President Trump announcing the plan while speaking alongside UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
Back, by the way, okay, that could be a little breaking news. We're trying to get it back because they need things from us. We want that base back. But one of the reasons we want the base is, as you know, it's an hour away from where China makes its nuclear weapons. So a lot of things are happening. But
in other news, the Trump administration is considering raising the retirement age as part of a broader effort to shore up Social Security's finances ahead of a projected trust fund shortfall in 2034. Social Security Administration Commissioner Frank Bisognano said today. Everything's being considered, he told Fox Business, adding that future beneficiaries will probably have a different set of rules than current retirees. Social Security's main trust funds are on track to be depleted in early 2034, as the worker-to-retiree ratio keeps shrinking from mid-20th century levels. Now, without legislative changes, benefits would be cut automatically to match incoming payroll taxes, an average reduction estimated at roughly 1/4. One commonly discussed fix would lift the payroll tax rate to close the long-term gap. Another is raising or eliminating the wage cap on taxable earnings. Bisognano emphasized that any solution will require coordination among the program's trustees, the SSA, Treasury, Labor, and HHS, alongside the White House and Congress. Now, he described the administration as committed to protect and preserve Social Security, but said that details and trade-offs will take time to negotiate. Policymakers are also weighing the impact of higher eligibility ages on Americans in physically demanding jobs and on those with shorter life expectancies. The debate is unfolding amid waning retirement confidence. Recent surveys show Americans increasingly worry about outliving their savings and question Social Security's long-term stability. Now, beyond the retirement age and contribution cap, lawmakers are expected to evaluate targeted solvency options, such as adjusted cost of living formulas, benefit phase-in for younger cohorts, and measures to strengthen the program's integrity while seeking a bipartisan package that avoids abrupt cuts for current seniors. Let's take a look.
The Trump administration is considering raising the retirement age as Social Security faces a looming financial crisis Government reports warn that by the year 2034, the trust funds that support Social Security could be depleted. That doesn't mean the program disappears, but it does mean benefits would have to be cut by nearly 20%, leaving millions of retirees with less than they were promised. Officials say one option on the table is pushing back the age at which Americans can collect full benefits. Advocates argue that people are living longer and healthier lives, and extending working years could help stabilize the system. They also point out that raising the retirement age has been done before, most recently in the 1980s, when Congress gradually moved it from 65 to today's 67.
This just in today, Turning Point USA has unanimously elected Erica Kirk as its new Chief Executive Officer and Chair of the Board, moving to solidify leadership 9 days after founder Charlie Kirk was shot and killed during a campus event at Utah Valley University. Now, the organization said Charlie Kirk had told multiple executives he wanted his wife Erica to lead TPUSA in the event of his death. In a statement, the board said the group was built to survive even the greatest tests and vowed to carry forward its mission under Erica's direction. Leaders framed the transition as a continuation of Charlie Kirk's vision to grow the movement he launched as a teenager and to expand its faith-driven activism. A public memorial building a legacy remembering Charlie Kirk is scheduled for Sunday, September 21st at State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. Now, the venue, which is home of the NFL's Arizona Cardinals, can accommodate more than 60,000 attendees for large-scale events. President Donald Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio are among the figures expected to speak at the memorial. TPUSA said it will carry on with its programs and chapters nationwide while honoring its late founder's legacy. Watch this.
It's new in just the last few minutes. Erica Kirk has been named the new CEO of Turning Point USA. She is the widow of Charlie Kirk, who founded the nonprofit that advocates for conservative politics on high school and college campuses. She's expected to speak at Sunday's memorial service in Arizona for Charlie, who was shot and killed at a Turning Point event.
And now moving on to the judiciary. The House Judiciary Committee has rejected a Democratic push to subpoena the chiefs of 4 major banks as part of an investigation into their past relationships with Jeffrey Epstein. Ranking member Jamie Raskin sought subpoenas for J.P. Morgan Chase's Jamie Dimon, Bank of America's Brian Moynihan, and Deutsche Bank's Kristen Suing, and BNY's Robin Vince, citing roughly $1.5 billion in suspicious transactions the banks reported to authorities over many years. Raskin argued the top executives should testify and turn over documents to clarify what their institutions knew and when about activity tied to Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and alleged collaborators. The motion failed during a committee hearing, halting for now Democrats' effort to put bank leadership under oath as part of the panel's broader oversight of financial institutions and federal law enforcement handling of the case. Now outside the hearing, Jamie Dimon said J.P. Morgan would comply with any lawful subpoena or other legal requirement and reiterated the bank's regret over any association with Jeffrey Epstein. J.P. Morgan has previously settled related civil litigation, and internal compliance reviews dating back to 2006 documented concerns about large, repeated cash withdrawals by Epstein, according to court filings in those cases. Now, Democrats also attempted unsuccessfully to subpoena Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino. Now, with the committee roadblocked, Democrats could seek a full House vote or pursue narrower document requests, while banks signal they will continue producing records through existing legal channels. The outcome keeps pressure on institutions and federal agencies to account for past oversight lapses, even as many of the underlying criminal matters have long since moved into the courts or been closed. Watch this.
Subpoena banking records connected to Jeffrey Epstein. The Republican-led House Judiciary Committee voted 20-19 to table a subpoena request for the CEOs of 4 banks. Those banks are J.P. Morgan, the Bank of New York, Bank of America, and Deutsche Bank. The CEO of J.P. Morgan says the bank is willing to comply with any Epstein-related subpoenas. It's estimated that the banks have flagged $1.5 billion in suspicious transactions related to sex trafficking crimes linked to Epstein and others close to him.
More news coming to you live after this break.
Pastor Chris in 1 Billion Homes Project is all about making sure the voice of our man of God, Pastor Chris Oyakhilome, arrives exactly when someone needs it the most. It's a global campaign to saturate the world with the gospel of our Lord Jesus like never before.
The gospel is going to go into places that it never was before, into disciplines and areas that it never was before, and establish a higher way of life.
Make a global impact today with your sponsorship of Pastor Chris in 1 Billion Homes Project. For every home you sponsor, you send the gospel where it's never gone. You become the reason someone receives life, a second chance, and finds Jesus. Through the dynamic Pastor Chris in 1 Billion Homes Project, we've been able to expand our global mission, touching more souls, more regions, and producing a wave of powerful testimonies from people whose lives have been forever changed. Your financial support as a Loveworld USA partner is not just generous, it's supernatural power for global impact. Let's keep sending the gospel into every home through the Pastor Chris in 1 Billion Homes Project. Sign up today and sponsor any of the following categories.
It's time for you to give the right sacrifice, the right seed, because it's time for you to get the right harvest.
You can sponsor Pastor Chris in 1 Billion Homes Project by calling or going on our website now. Sign up to be Pastor Chris in 1 Billion Homes Project partner today. God bless you.
Welcome back. A federal judge has temporarily blocked Loudoun County Public Schools from suspending one of 2 high school boys who were found responsible for sexual harassment after complaining about a transgender classmate in a boys' locker room. The emergency order pauses the 10-day suspension and the placement of a Title IX finding on the student's record while the case proceeds. U.S. District Judge Leonie Brinkema wrote that losing the first 10 days of in-person instruction could cause serious negative effects, and that the balance of equities favors keeping the student in school pending further review. Now, while she said she is not certain the families will ultimately prevail on the merits, Brinkema described the allegations as troubling and concluded the public interest is served by ensuring due process before suspensions take effect. Now, the dispute stems from an incident earlier this year at the Northern Virginia High School in which a transgender student in a boys' locker room recorded video that captured 2 boys audibly objecting to the student's presence. The district opened a Title IX inquiry into the boys and ultimately found both responsible for sexual harassment, imposing 10-day suspensions and noting the finding on their records. An internal appeal by the families was wholly denied. Following the denial, the parents sued in federal court, arguing the district misapplied Title IX and violated the student's speech and due process rights. The district's broader policy permitting transgender students to use facilities consistent with their gender identity remains in place and was not before the courts. More news on President Donald Trump today. The President and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer have announced a tech prosperity deal valued at $350 billion, calling it the largest investment package of its kind in British history. Rolled out to Chequers, the plan centers on advanced nuclear power, artificial intelligence, and future network tech, with Starmer saying it will create about 15,000 jobs across the United Kingdom, and President Trump projecting roughly 2,500 jobs and $50 billion in economic value in the United States. A headline feature is the development of 12 advanced nuclear reactors intended to underpin the surging energy needs of data centers and other high-demand tech infrastructure on both sides of the Atlantic. Prime Minister Starmer cast the reactors as a dual win: energy for millions of homes and businesses and greater price stability, while President Trump framed the accord as a blueprint for quantum computing, fusion, 6G, and civil nuclear, coupled with lighter touch regulation to accelerate innovation. The leaders highlighted fresh private sector commitments alongside the government-to-government framework, citing interest from NVIDIA, OpenAI, Google, Salesforce, and others in scaling UK research, cloud, and compute capacity. Now, key details, including the financing structure, build sequence for the reactors, citing decisions and timelines for 6G and quantum testbeds, were not released, but both leaders emphasized energy security, workforce development, and faster permitting as priorities to unlock the promised investment and ensure that next-generation compute is backed by reliable, affordable power. Watch this.
Hold that up.
You are among friends, and I think we all agree there's so much to celebrate in the special relationship between our two countries. The deals and investment that you're announcing today break all records. What a day. £250 billion flowing both ways across the Atlantic. It is the biggest investment package of its kind in British history.
In other news, automobile giant Hyundai Motor Group has said it will spend $2.7 billion to expand its Ellabelle, Georgia complex, lifting annual capacity by 200,000 vehicles to 500,000 vehicles over the next 3 years. The commitment comes weeks after an ICE raid at the adjoining battery site delayed startup and stoked diplomatic tensions with South Korea. Now, as part of the push, Hyundai plans to build 10 electric and hybrid models in Georgia, up from 2 today, and says 60% of its global output will be electrified by 2030. In the United States, the automaker aims for more than 80% domestic content and production of vehicles sold here by 2030, and it will add a mid-size pickup to target a key segment. The company's joint battery venture with LG Energy Solution remains delayed by at least 2 to 3 months, with opening now slated for the first half of 2026. Hyundai and on-site affiliates currently employ about 3,100 people in Ellabelle. Total investment at the Georgia hub tops $12.6 billion, with at least 8,500 jobs pledged by 2031, supported by $2.1 billion in state and local incentives. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp said the state is working with the White House on visa issues after more than 300 South Korean nationals were arrested in the raid. Globally, Hyundai's expansion plan adds 1.2 million units of annual capacity, including boosts in India and South Korea and parts shipments for assembly in Saudi Arabia, Vietnam, and North Africa. Let's take a look.
Thursday morning, buses carrying more than 300 South Korean nationals arrived at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport with a police escort. They boarded Korean Air Flight 9036 to fly home after being detained during an ICE raid in southeast Georgia. The raid happened at a Hyundai plant in Ellabelle that makes electric vehicles. Federal agents say they detained 475 people there who had entered the country illegally or had an expired work visa. Immigration attorney Charles Cook, who represents some of the workers, told Atlanta News First that many of them were installers and engineers who would have been gone in the coming months.
Much like we make products that aren't made in other parts of the world, we send Americans over there to install it. That's all that was going on.
Democratic State Senator Derek Mallow, who represents District 2, where that raid happened, now questioning how this could impact Georgia's business relationships with foreign countries moving forward.
Stay with us. The news continues after this break.
It's easy to set up, quick to start, and packed with value. Smarter streaming starts here with the Alpha TV Stick. Just plug and stream anytime, anywhere. Discover a curated lineup of content designed to inspire, live broadcasts and global events, inspirational films and series, children's programming, healing and teaching sessions, all on demand.
With millions of downloads worldwide, the Alpha TV app is transforming lives across the globe. And now, we're on a mission to reach 1 billion downloads of the Alpha TV app, and you can be part of it. Join the global wave with 1 billion Alpha TV app downloads worldwide. Bring the higher life into every home. Order your Alpha TV Stick today and experience smarter streaming. Alpha, the higher life is here.
On the international front tonight, Ukraine welcomed fresh pledges of high-end air defenses and long-range firepower, even as President Donald Trump said in London that Vladimir Putin had let him down on efforts to end the war. President Volodymyr Zelensky said Kiev expects about $3.5 billion in U.S.-made weapons, financed by European partners, including additional Patriot air defense interceptors and HIMARS munitions. Now, for Ukraine, the funding route matters. Instead of new U.S. congressional aid, allies will channel money through the Prioritize Ukraine Requirements list, a program that pulls partner contributions for U.S. procurement. Kiev views the first two $500 million tranches approved this week as a restart to stall deliveries and a signal that core European backers, Germany, Poland, the United Kingdom, and others, are prepared to shoulder more of the bill. Trump's public frustration with President Putin underscores the lack of a breakthrough after months of diplomacy. But Kiev's focus remains practical, closing air defense gaps ahead of winter strikes, sustaining artillery fire, and keeping Russian glide bombs, drones, and missiles at bay. Ukrainian officials say Patriots, integrated with other systems, are critical to protecting cities and energy infrastructure, while ground forces conserve scarce interceptors. The shift to Allied financing arrives as the Pentagon rebalances U.S. stockpiles and industry races to expand output. Ukrainian commanders have warned that the economics of air defense are unsustainable if expensive interceptors are used against cheap drones. They are urging partners to accelerate delivery of lower-cost counter-UAS options alongside precision rockets and 120, 152, and 155-millimeter ammunition to stabilize the front. President Zelensky may meet President Trump on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly next week to press for predictable multi-quarter pipelines of air defense, fires, and repair kits. Kiev's message is unchanged. The war's outcome hinges on steady supply, not single announcements, and every Patriot battery, HIMARS pod, and pallet of shells delivered now reduces Russia's ability to terrorize civilians and complicates its offensive plans. Now, while President Donald Trump said the war doesn't affect the United States, Ukraine stresses the stakes for Europe's security architecture and global energy and grain markets. From Kiev's perspective, the renewed flow of systems financed by allies is a step towards deterrence, and a reminder that the quickest path to peace still runs through battlefield pressure backed by sustained Western support. Watch this.
Tonight, new developments on the global stage. U.S. allies are stepping up military support, unlocking fresh shipments of advanced weapons to Ukraine. The move comes as President Trump continues to lament Russian President Vladimir Putin, while at the same time pushing America's European partners to shoulder more of the financial burden for the war effort. In recent days, NATO countries announced new commitments from long-range missiles to air defense systems, aiming to bolster Ukraine's defense.
Our sources tell us today that nearly 1,000 travelers were stuck in Aguas Calientes, the gateway town to Machu Picchu, after rail service was suspended amid protests over a contested bus concession to the mountaintop citadel. Demonstrators opposed the replacement of longtime operator Cosseteur and, at points, placed rocks on the tracks, forcing trains to stop. Peru's tourism minister said authorities evacuated about 1,400 people on Monday, leaving roughly 900 still waiting in town as officials work to restore safe passage. The U.S. Embassy urged Americans to avoid large gatherings and be prepared for sudden disruptions to transportation and site access. Organizers accused local authorities of a lack of transparency in awarding the contract, while rail operators paused trains for safety. Limited services resumed 2 days after the initial shutdown, but schedules remained fluid as authorities cleared debris and assessed risk. Machu Picchu, a 15th century Inca citadel and UNESCO World Heritage Site, typically draws thousands of visitors daily. The disruption highlights the site's reliance on a narrow transport network, buses up the mountain, and a single railway corridor through the Urubamba Valley, where even brief blockages can strand large numbers of tourists. Let's take a look.
Peru's number one tourist attraction that had turned sour ended on Tuesday after tourists had been stuck overnight near Machu Picchu due to a railway line blocked by protesters. Some 900 were stranded at the nearest railway station. They were told their only option was to walk several kilometres and arrange their own transport from there, leaving many frustrated.
I don't even know if agreeing to that walk would guarantee transport afterwards. And in my case, I can't do it because my wife is pregnant. So for me personally, it's not feasible.
Still, there was sympathy from some for the protesters.
For us, the situation is horrible, but I think it's the right and it's important to do the strike here. And it's always so that the companies get a lot of money from the tourists, and the people who are working here, they don't get anything.
Just before we end the news, let's have a quick look at tomorrow's weather forecast. And to end the news tonight, let's have a quick look at today's top headlines. President Trump says the United States is trying to get Bagram back from the Taliban. Trump administration weighs higher retirement age as Social Security faces 2034 shortfall. And Turning Point USA names Erica Kirk CEO and board chair after husband's assassination. House Judiciary blocks Democratic bid to subpoena bank CEOs in Jeffrey Epstein inquiry. And a federal judge halts discipline of Virginia students in locker room dispute, citing irreparable harm. And that's all the news we have for you today. Join us at the same time tomorrow for more news. I'm Joel Richard. God bless you. God bless our armed forces. And God bless the United States of America.